one night, and as a result of what they found, the nut was suspended for a month. So we came back in this car, same car, different number. Continued to bring home the hardware. That car was like it was on a rail, wasn't it, Shorty?
Yeah, well,
Driving for one of my friends, Frank Marcus. I'm in the 73 there, going over the wall. The number 80 there, going the wrong way. That guy's name was Don Lyons. He and I had our difficulties over years trying to share the same, real estate. This time it came to a head. Frank normally drove his own car. He was down and he was getting out to get along that night, and I don't know why he never invited me back. This is the first time, and the last time I drove 73. High Point Award at Golden Gate. That gentleman there behind the podium was Frank Derry. I'll talk a little bit more about him in a few minutes, but as a promoter goes, I can't say that about him. Behind him is Gordon Soley. Any of y'all ever went to Tampa to Golden Gate Speedway back in the day? Anyway, Gordon Soley was a heck of an announcer. We finally had made friends. Gordon also was big into wrestling. He sponsored wrestlers, and he announced at the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory in Tampa. But anyway, that's High Point. Thank you. This car here is the only known photograph of the car. That car was built by a good friend of mine called Skinny Tom Robinson. He and I were co-workers at Big 3 Auto Salvage for a number of years. Tom was a chassis man and a fabricator. I helped him a little bit on this car. This car was way out of the box in terms of legal. We did a lot of modifications to the frame so that the weight was on the left side of the car, but hopefully they couldn't find it when we go to the room of doom. With those changes, frame rail was close to the fuel pump, which on a small block Chevy's in the right front corner. We had another little thing where we had a trap door and firewall with the driver and a wire attached to the distributor, so the driver could reach through after we started the car and then started the race. We could advance and go a little faster. So the driver, that was the very first night out. We won the heat and the feature the very first night out at Golden Gate. The next time back at Golden Gate, we won the heat. And then in the feature, I had hit somebody coming up through the pack and had knocked the fuel pump off the motor. Didn't realize that was going down into one at Golden Gate, coming off the two down the back chute. I had real strong smell gas. And I thought, oh man, I'm in trouble. And I let off to go into 3, and the car ignited, just blew up like a bomb. And the whole thing was engulfed in flames. I couldn't breathe. I made the mistake of trying to breathe. And I wasn't aware that fire takes all the oxygen out of the room. And all I could think of was getting out. I had got myself unbuckled and I bailed out of the window between 3 and 4. And by this time, I'd worked my way up to like second and third. And I remember when I went out the window, I looked behind me and all I could see was Chevrolet grills coming, and I thought, well, this is not going to end well. And miraculously, I hit the pavement and I rolled across the corner, across the pavement, and up at Golden Gate when you come off of 4, they had a big grader tire at the beginning of the wall started. And I rolled up and up against the bottom of that grader tire. The blame all right, which I can't blame for that. So he got upset with it, and then I got the call and asked me if I'd be interested in taking a ride. This is really the first quality ride that I had gotten in my coming up to the tornado class. So I drove that car for Pete for almost 2 years, about a year and a half. During that time, my brother-in-law and I, who had teamed up until now, had some issues, and we were feuding. And so didn't make for real good Thanksgivings and Christmases, but it made for hell of a racing thing. So he was driving the number 9 Tornado for a couple of brothers, and I was driving the 39. So we had a heck of a lot of. There's one of the articles of the time when we were head to head for the points championship. So anyway, that lasted for about a year and a half. There we are side by side on the track at St. Pete at Sunshine Speedway. Of course, he's on the outside. And so we argue to this day of who's passing who. But so yeah. There's another ride I got. Of course, every time I look at that, I think of the Darrell Waltrip. You picked a fine time to leave me loose wheel. That's the 39 car after Pete sold it, and the guy that bought it asked me to drive it 2 times. Ran the wheels off of it, you can see. Shortly after this, my brother-in-law and I passed the peace pipe, and we bought this car together. And this was the beginning of our successful Tornado car that we won the points championship with, which follows this. This is the car that we tore down the old 24 Tornado, rebuilt it from scratch, frame, chassis, the whole deal, and the thing handled like it was on a rail, worked real well. We won the points championship with that car in 1973 in both tracks. There that car is again, taking on the hardware. Again, same car. That's Kenny there on my left. That's my son, JC, holding the trophy. Got some flag down the seat, such a. There we are at the points championship, the awards banquet. Again, I know this is the honor, so I've got to go fast. There was a gentleman around named Ricky Smallwood. He's called the Model Car Man. He makes model race cars for different racers, and I was humbled when he made one of the championship car. Tornado car we won the championship with. So I put it side by side for folks to see how close the model was to the real deal. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's why that picture's here. Just another picture of the same car. Jim Roder there, that's at Golden Gate Speedway County. After we sold the car, started to build the late model for 74. The guys that bought the car asked me to drive it for a while, and I did, and won some races with it. There it is again, that's at Golden Gate. But then Shorty took the ride over, and there he is in the same car. Again, he turned out to be a real good racer, and won a lot of races in this car. So there you go. Moving on to late models. My first year in late models was 1974. It was the actual numeric number 4. We won a lot of races with this car right off the bat. We actually used the same chassis, leaf spring design that we did in the Tornado car. So this car has got a 1957 frame and leaf spring chassis under it. When I came out in late models, my goal was to beat Billy Gill. He was the high point champion in both Tampa and St. Pete. So he was my goal. Same car again. We started winning with it right off the bat. Kenny and I again, he the owner, and we both built the cars together. Another shot of the same car. Took on a lot of hardware that first year. Now, here's the result of the dumbest thing I've ever done in a race car. I've done some stupid things, but this one takes the cake. I was racing Billy Gill. This is at Sunshine. Trying to get around him, and I finally got by him. Yeah, we traded paint. Got some wheel marks on the 24 late model. That's his car. I finally got by him, and then coming off of 2 at St. Pete, he hooked me and spun me coming off of 2. So I kept my foot in it, spun the car around into the figure eight track, and here he's going down the back chute into 3, and I decided to T-bone him on the front straightaway. So I powered up. I mean, it was like something in the movies, except I just missed his back bumper by and that's the result. So that resulted in my first MRI and the first overnight in the hospital. But it was a stupid thing to do. I'm going to say something about Billy Gill right now. Later, in 1977, my son was hit by a hit-and-run driver on front of our house and had serious injuries. Was in a coma for almost a year, et cetera, et cetera. He came out of it about 35% paralyzed, and he's got some issues, but he's here, here with us today. Where I'm going with that is that happened in '77. I was in the middle of my racing career. It changed our lives forever. But Billy Gill, he passed the hat, he passed his helmet around. He contributed his winnings, his earnings to the cause. I just can't say enough about that man as a driver, but more as a man. And when he passed away here a couple years ago, I wouldn't have nothing but to go to his funeral and speak to that, which I did down in Sarasota. Again, as I was saying, we did real good in our first year. The Florida 200 rolls around. I qualified 9th for this race. They inverted the first 9s, so I started on the pole. What's a little bit funny about this race is my mom never came to any of these races. All she would do is read about the results in the paper the next day. And I kept telling her, Mom, you need to come out and see these races. Once you see these races, you'll get hooked. So we talked her into coming to the Governors Cup 200 in '74. And again, I started on the pole. Now, this is the most, or was the most prestigious race in the state of Florida. I'm on the pole in my very first year in the late model. I'm telling you, when I came off the floor in that pace lap, my foot was on the gas like, and I know the guy beside me thought, what the hell is he trying? I was so nervous I couldn't dedicate 55 gallon drum. But anyway, that's the funny part about that. But even worse, my mom's in the grandstand, and we had made some hot laps. The whole field had made some hot laps to clean off the track and the tires, and then everybody got together. Well, during those hot laps, she had come down to stand at the bottom of the stand. She was up top sitting with my wife. Well, then I'm told when the flag fell, she went behind the stands, smoked one cigarette after another, and just turned in a circle the whole time and said, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So that was the first and last time my mom came to the race. By the way, we ended up 12th, and we were totally unprepared. We had tire issues. You should have seen us make a pit stop. We looked like the Keystone Cops. Anyway, I was tickled to start on the pole, and I was tickled to finish 12th. Those are just the standings that were in the paper. The same year, they had what they call the Florida Gulf Coast 100 that was run at Sunshine Speedway on Saturday night before the Governor's Cup was run at Tampa on Sunday. So we got in the lead in that race. I was leading that race from about halfway on. This is a 100 lapper and a quarter mile. There was a fellow there, you see him there in the middle, you may have heard of him. His name is Charlie Mincy. He's out of Woodstock, Georgia, Dixie Speedway up there. In the land of Jody Ridley and other hot shoes. I had never heard of Charlie Mincy until he caught me in that race with about 5 or 6 to go. Actually, there was more than that because he tried to get under me and around me. And with just 1 to go, or 1.5 to go, he got under me and did the bump and run, sent me up the corner. I managed to finish second. But I immediately drove down in the pits and behind his rig, and we had a come to Jesus meeting. And after we rolled around the dirt for a while, and and his crew and my crew and the law enforcement got there and separated us. And we discussed things over several adult libations for a long time. We became friends. That's the same night right there. I mean, it's amazing, how where you get your friends. I mean, it ended up pretty neat. Well, he turns around and he said, "Look, we got 100 lapper coming up in my home track, Dixie Speedway in Woodstock." He said, "Why don't you come on up? It'll give you a chance to, redemption." Sure. So away we go. And here we are at Dixie Speedway, a half mile of Woodstock. It's still asphalt here. You dirt truck fans know that now the asphalt's been taken up and it's half mile dirt. Back then it was asphalt. So we go up there and we make hot laps. We get in the race. I qualified ninth in this race. But between Charlie Mincy and Jody Ridley, they took me to the woodshed again. They really kicked my butt up there. But it was fun going there and fun to take on the challenge. That young man right there in the blonde hairdo, that's Brian Westcott Sr. He was a neighbor, a good friend that was helping me in the car. He passed away back in 2001. He became a driver himself, driving late model sportsmen and then finally late models. He did very well. Had 4 children, passed away way early in life, but he was helping me on the 4 car then, and that's why he's shown in this picture. This photo, I have this picture in there because my dad, my racing was his thing. He just couldn't get around the race car enough, especially when we built the late model. He just loved that thing. And he kept bugging me to take him for a ride, and I never stopped and took the time until we went to Dixie Speedway in Woodstock. And we had warmed up, and it was getting dark. As you can see, it's getting dark. So I told Kenny, who owned the car, I said, "Look, I think we can get Pappy in there if he sits low on the right hand side. I'll give him the ride of his life." 2 things happened. For one thing, I went out there and I turned some hot laps. I went up real close to the wall, to show him real drivers do this. And I expected when we pulled back in, I thought his first thing would say, "Oh boy, how fast you're going, how close you got to the wall." But it wasn't. What he said was, "I can't believe the noise that thing. How do you stand that noise? That thing needs mufflers. That thing leaves mufflers on." But the reason you see my expression there is one of dismay. The officials, of course, the flagman looked up and saw I had somebody else in the car, and black flagged everybody that was warming up out there, including me, and he pulled in there. And right about there, I'm being told, "We don't care who you think you are or how far you pulled to come to this racetrack. If you pull this down again, you can load it back on the trailer and go back to Largo." So I almost didn't get a chance to get my butt beat that night by Mincy and Ridley, but I did get in the race, and we did win. This is moving on to the 4. In 1975, we changed the numeric 4 to the spelled out 4. This is 1975. There on my outside is the number 12 Nova of Bontrager, Ray Bontrager. He's out of Sarasota. Behind him is the number 24 Billy Gill that I've already talked about. 2 hot shoes of the day in the Tampa Bay area. These 2 cars, both cars we built in 75 and 76, again on 57 Chevy chassis, leaf spring rear, handled like they were on the rail. This is where I picked up my nickname from the announcer at St. Pete, because I could just go up against the wall and just stay there. It didn't matter where we started. So it's just, I can't say enough about the way this car worked. And again, not the driver. Kenny and I did all the fabrication on the car, and the car worked real well. There's the bounty that Jerry was referring to. We had won several futures in a row at St. Pete, so they put a bounty on the car. Unfortunately, I broke my foot on a construction site, when the bounty started, what the deal when you see $100 reward there on the program. What it says in the writing was, if that was over 4 races, and if somebody could beat me over those 4 races, then they'd get that $100. That's not big money for a bounty, but anyway, I won the first 3. Again, I'm in a cast, left foot broken, and the 4th night, Ray Bontrager, that number, the other number 12, Nova, beat me a couple laps from the end, and I was so upset. I was supposed to have the cast on for 2 months. I drove in the pits, got out of the car, got the hacksaw out of the truck, and I cut the cast off on the trailer. Then I hobbled down to Ray's pit, and I said, "Come on, let's go out, let's try that again." No, we're all done. So anyway, this is a picture of me, winning the features before he won that last feature and got the $100 final. Bless his heart. Here we are at the World Series Stock Car Racing New Smyrna Speedway, 1975. Car broke, didn't finish well. Only thing I can say is I think we finished 9th and 10th overall for that series, which is nothing to write home about, but heck of an experience. Again, this is at Smyrna. You may recognize some of the cars there. We're up there on the top side. Down below me is, that's Charlie Mincy in the 16. Behind him is Pete Hamilton in the 25. Behind Pete, Jody Ridley in the 98. I don't know who the 7X, he's from your area, Bobby. I don't know who's in that 7X. Then we decided to go down and show them what we're made of at the Palm Beach Fairgrounds Speedway. This is the Orange Blossom 100, 1975. We were just doing so well that we thought, well, we'll just go down there and take it to them. This is one of the restarts, I think. There we are on the second. It's hard to see, but I think we're second on the inside there, third. But the story here is, here we are again on the outside pole. We went down there and unloaded, and I'm used to short tracks, St. Pete, Tampa, where you drive a whole different style than here. So we go down there and I unload, and I go out there and I start turning hot laps. I ran, 15, 20 hot laps, and I came in. I was driving the car like I did at St. Pete. Fast, up against the wall, down the chute, lift for a second, set the car, hang the left front wheel over the edge of the asphalt, stay low, around the corners, come out the other side, gangbusters, yada yada. So I came in after 15 or 20 hot laps, and my brother said, "What's the matter with the car?" I said, "Fine with me, I must be running 200 miles an hour out there." He said, "No," he said, "You're 2.5 seconds off," or whatever. Well, I had never heard of Bobby Brack when I went down there. Show you how ignorant I was. But my brother-in-law knew Bobby, and he said, "Look," he said, I know somebody down here that's a bad daddy." He said, "Do you mind if I go talk to him and see if he'll let you follow him around?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind." So he went down and got Bobby, and Bobby said, "Yeah, fine, no problem." And boy, what a difference. I mean, that was following Bobby around that racetrack was an e-ticket ride. I'll never forget that, and I appreciate the lesson, Bobby. Didn't get us a win. We were only down there a couple of times and really never got oriented to the place. I'm not trying to make excuses. Fast racetrack, love the trip, love the lesson. Again, Palm Beach, you'll recognize that purple number 57 on the outside just in front of us. I believe that's Mike McCurry, the 5 behind us. Outside of him is somebody called Gary Ballou. You may have heard of him. There we are again, same trip. That's Dan Daughtry in the D&M Construction Special 98 Ford on the outside. Here's another lesson at Palm Beach. This is coming off of 4. I'm still trying to get my Palm Beach legs. Took a couple spin outs, but I thank the photographer for catching me in my embarrassed moment. That's just the Gulf Coast, the Florida Gulf Coast 100 St. Pete, all the winners. Moose Myers was the original winner. We won it in 75. You'll see the rest of the drivers there. They're pretty impressive. Now comes the 200, the Governor's Cup, 1975. We qualified 8th or 9th, something like that. Got behind, got things squared away. I can't remember, we had a tire problem or what, got things squared away. Howe was way out there in the lead, and toward the end of the race, we were starting to run him down. We got within 4 or 5 car lengths of him with 19 laps to go, and I ran out of gas. Same photographer caught me coming off. I'm coming into the pits for gas right there. I just ran out of fuel. Got in there, took a splash of gas, got back out, finished 7th on the lead lap. It almost was to be on my second year in late models. But again, that's just an article out of St. Pete. Programmed with our wins and our first and all that year. Again, the same model car guy, build the model of the car. I'd like to take a picture of the model with one of the pictures of the car just to show how close he was. He really builds an accurate model. This is 1976. Again, we won points championship that year again. That's Bontrager on the outside in the 12. Behind him in the 21 Ford Mustang, you might have heard of him, that's David Scarborough. There we are. We had a little altercation with one of the Alderman boys, Kenny Alderman. He and I were trying to occupy the same real estate, St. Pete. Turning sideways down the front chute, and then Bontrager got airborne and came into the driver's window. Then he ended up cartwheeling in the 12 late model, off into one, over the fence and into the pits. And somehow never hit anybody, never hit a crewman, never hit a soul. This is a result. Next morning back at the shop, I built that cage, and it withstood a pretty good impact. There were cars again. That's the car after it was rebuilt, ready to go back to battle. That's one of my proudest awards. Don't know if you've ever heard of a man called Marty Little. He was a long-time announcer at Hialeah, Palm Beach, a heck of a historian. I don't know anybody that knows any more about Florida short track racing or any racing than Marty did. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. That's Marty's dad, Chuck Little. That award is it's a Dick Jocelyn Memorial Trophy, and that was given to me after the 200 in 1975 after we ran out of gas for best sportsmanship attitude. But my point is, Chuck Little has a hell of a racing history, not to speak of his son, Marty, who again, neither one of these gentlemen are still with us. So that was one of my proudest awards right there. Then moving along, 1977, this is the car we built. This is the Camaro we built in 77. It's the one I like best looks-wise. Wasn't as fast as the Chevelles. Still won a lot of races with that car. There we are at the Gulf again, the Florida Gulf Coast 100, St. Pete. That's Robert Hamke and I on track. Again, Ricky, the model car man, Smallwood made a model of that car, and again, I take a picture of it side by side with the actual photograph of the car just to show you the detail. Moving on, these are cars, various four Camaros that we built, variations of the car. Each one we did well in. But by this time, we were only coming out for special events. We weren't running for any points championships. We were only coming out for special races. Another variation of the Ford Camaro. This is a Triple Crown weekend, 1979 in St. Pete. Kneeling there is Mike Miller. That's his Oldsmobile number 18 up against the wall. On the right there is Dave Scarborough. And we're planning strategy for the race later on. This is the beginning of the Governor's Cup for 1979. You might recognize that guy in 99, that's Dick Trickle. We started on the outside of him, that's the four sitting on the outside, that's Dave Scarborough at the door, at the window. Dick is just climbing in his car. That's the promoter, Dan Jones of Sunshine Speedway. He's offering Trickle a cigarette. If anybody is aware of Dick Trickle, he was a chain smoker. Very, very nice guy. He's, you know, we had a lot of cars, a lot of drivers, short track drivers that drove for a living, that was pulled to the track for special events, and we would always be aggravated because half the time they would offload and set fast time and start on the pole and all that at a racetrack that, you know, we were racing it all year long, so it was a little aggravating. But where I'm going with all this, for the most part, they were very closed-mouthed about how they made their car work and stuff like that, but Trickle was not. Trickle would tell you anything. He would answer any question. I just always found him to be very accommodating. Now, don't get me wrong, always that cigarette dangling out of his mouth. And that car, along with all the other 99 Dick Trickle cars I ever looked into, has an active cigarette lighter in the motor. Here we are during the race. I had already passed Trickle one time at this point, but I had hit somebody with the four. So it was a back marker coming through their lapping car, and the hood. We didn't have our hood hinge. That hood had hood pins on it in all four corners. So as you can see, the hood is up there. I couldn't see past the hood. I started having to hang my head out the side window to see, and that rascal got back behind me, or back ahead of me. I got permission from the track officials to pull off in the infield. There was a red flag. Everybody stopped, and they let me pull off in the infield, get out of the car, and take the hood off. And so here I am. You can see the hood is off the floor. Now I'm catching him again. Caught him again with about 10 or 12 to go, and working outside, inside, and I was all over him. And then finally was able to run in deep enough on the outside to stay there, and passed him on the outside fair and square. Here we are in Victory Circle. You can see the number 99 Super America Firebird parked behind the four. It's one of my favorite photographs. There's a funny thing. One of our associate sponsors, you see the name on the quarter pound there, Big Three. That's the salvage yard that I started working for when I was a teenager. That guy's name is Ralph Whitey Westcott. Unfortunately, he's in the hospital right now having some pretty nasty health issues. But at the time, it was funny. Whitey walked back to Trickle during the photo sessions, and he congratulated Trickle for a clean race because I did pass him on the outside. He didn't rough me up where he could have. And Trickle said, "I don't know who that guy is," but he said, "Every time I looked in my mirror, all I saw was a beard." He said, "He was so close to me, all I saw was a beard. I thought he was in the back seat." The other thing is, our primary sponsor, who was Herman Jensen Auto Body, hard to make out there, but it's above before. He had standing tickets at the Daytona 500 every year. Well, this is luck would have it. His seats were next to one of Trickle's associate sponsors. So every year, our sponsor, Herman Jensen, had to go listen to all the Dick Trickle trash talk and how their car beat the local cars, whatever he came to town and say. So Herman, after this race, he could hardly wait for the Daytona 500, so he could trash talk back, so I thought that was pretty fun. By the way, Herman Jensen's the only man that I'm aware of that flew a single-engine plane in and out of the stadium in New York. What's the baseball stadium there? Huh? Anyway, I can't remember the name of the stadium, but he's the only one that ever flew, landed a plane successfully in that stadium. They wouldn't let him fly it out, he had to take it apart, you know, but he was a hell of a pilot, trying to sell. Not much after this. That's the trophy you're on the Governor's Cup race. Your name goes on the Governor's Cup, but that stays at the track. That's the trophy you get to take home. Again, that's Frank Daring with the red hat that was the promoter at Golden Gate. He's there with the promoter, Dan Jones, St. Pete. That was St. Pete program. Governor's Cup. My name's there right under the trickles on the left, hard to see. And then to finish out, these are the 4 Camaros after our win. Again, we only came out for special events, won some races, but things were getting pretty grim. We just weren't able to compete like we used to, so this is one of the final races I won. That's my daughter Michelle and my son Jason. That was